Hey, what's going on? I'm going to be doing the box called Access today from the Hack the Box platform. The reason I wanted to be doing this one and recording it is because there's some good file enumeration principles in this box, which compared to my other two videos, they're more focused on exploiting vulnerable applications and Active Directory attacks. But that's not everything. So file enumeration is definitely a key thing to have in your arsenal, and you need to be able to deal with files accordingly and find whatever information is inside, because that can potentially be a foothold, which is a little bit of a spoiler, but that's all right. Without further ado, let's get to the box. So first things first, we've got the IP address. All we need to do is a nmap scan. Always, I'm using the same flags for my first scans, and if that works, then we just keep going forward, and if it doesn't, then we can decrease the intensity of the scan. Okay, now that our nmap scan is finished, let's just take a note of this. Let's look through it. First thing here, there's a FTP port with anonymous access allowed. We should definitely be checking this as well. Tells us some information, so it is a Windows machine. We've got something related to Telnet on port 23. Maybe. It's nmap is not 100% sure of this, so we should manually test this later on to confirm this. And we got a HTTP server on port 80, and it says it's an IIS server for Megacorp. Okay. Even though it doesn't confirm the operating system here, and it's doing a lot of guesses, most of these are related to Windows, but also we know here from the FTP board scan that the system is running Windows as well. And also in the HTTP ports, we can see that it's a Microsoft IIS server. So with these two things here, we can already practically confirm beyond reasonable doubt that this is Windows. So let's get started. The first thing here is definitely to check the anonymous access on the FTP port. So let's just put in the IP address. And since it's on port 21, we're not going to need to specify this. And for anonymous access, I think if we just type A and then no password. Oh no, never mind. Let's try again. Username anonymous, no password. Okay, so there's two directories here. Let's cd into backup. Oh, backups. There's one file here. Let's just make sure and get that. Okay. Interesting. So when we're trying to transfer the file, we can see that the command is successful, and then right before it's done transferring the file, we get here, it says that the interrupted system call, the specified network name is no longer available. So let's see if we're still connected here. Can we still send commands? We can. So for some reason, the transfer is failing here, actually. And the first thing that I'm going to try here is, we can see here, it says that it's transferring the file using ASCII, but in FTP, there's also another way to transfer files, which is using binary. So if we can't transfer it correctly over ASCII, it's might be due to the fact that we're not using binary. So let's just switch over to binary. All right, so we switched over now. Let's try to get the file again. And now we see that we were able to transfer the file successfully. So if we're having issues with transferring the file using one method, it's always worth to just either try again or switch to binary and then try again. And as we can see, that works for us. So there was only one file in the backups directory. Let's go back and check the engineer. And we've got a zip file. Let's retrieve that. And because we're already in binary, that succeeds, but maybe if we were in ASCII, that would have failed as well. So it's just good to know. Now that we've got all the files, we can just say bye and clear. Let's create a directory for the box as well. All right, perfect. Now we've transferred the files. Let's just take a look at them and see. So the first one is a zip file, and the second one is a MDB file. This does not seem like a very common file format, so we might want to be doing some checks to see what this file format is for. So let's see. What is .mdb file extension? All right, so let's trust the AI here, and we can see that it's related to Microsoft Access Database file. So while we're on a Linux machine, we can actually use this resource called MDB opener. And this is going to allow us to open this file without actually having Microsoft Access on our device. So let's locate the file. So we've got a bunch of different information here inside of this file. So let's just start opening these one by one and see. Okay, so not a lot of information in this one. Maybe departments. Okay, we can see some department information. This might be interesting later on. Okay, so there's a lot of different columns, but that does not seem to be anything interesting. System log. This is empty, unfortunately. But let's see if these larger file sizes, maybe there's something interesting inside. So this is interesting. We've got a set of employee badge numbers, as well as their birthdays and hiring day. Their address should probably be here as well, but it seems that they did not fill that out. And we've got a list of passwords too. So this is worth taking a note of as actually. Let's just leave this tab open just in case we need to access this later on. So most of these we can see that they're just 0, 0, 0, 0. So it's not even worth opening those because we know it's going to be empty. Action log might be interesting, but they're not giving us a lot of information here. Let's just keep looking through files. Okay, auth user has 3 entries. And we can already see some information here. But I'm struggling to read this lines here, but maybe we can inspect element to read it. Yes, we can. So looking back at the files that we have here, which were access control and backup, we also remember that the name of the directory in the FTP was backups and engineer. And here we've got a backup admin user as well as an engineer user and admin user. So these two passwords are the same, while this one is unique. Let's just take a note of these and see if what we can use them for later on. Specifically, this one is more interesting to me because of the directory that we found this access control.zip file in matches the name of engineer. So this file might either reveal more information about this engineer user, and that might allow us further access into the system potentially, or might reveal possibly credentials for the engineer user besides the ones that we already have here. But for now, let's just take a note of the credentials and see if we're able to use these somewhere later on. We have admin, admin, and then also backup, admin, admin. Okay, we don't need to save that. Great. Let's move on to the zip file here, and if not, we don't find anything, then we can just go back and enumerate further on the MDB file. So let's open our file explorer here and see if we can open the zip file. Let's see if we can extract it. Okay, it's asking us for a password here. So normally, if I did not have any information or any password, I would start to brute force this using either fcrackzip or extracting the hash using zip to John and then using John the Ripper to crack the hash. But because we already have a password here for the engineer user, let's assume that this password is being reused and see if it allows us to extract this zip directory or the zip archive. All right, so it appears that the password worked and we were able to extract the files. Let's see. So the file extension here is .pst. Let's see how we can view this file. How to open or how to view .pst file. Okay, so it's a personal storage table, and we're going to need to open it within Microsoft Outlook. But we don't have Outlook, so let's see if we can view it without Outlook. How to view PST file in Linux. You can use the read PST command line tool. Okay, let's see. Do we already have this by default? No, we don't. But we can install it. Let's see if we can open this file now. Read PST, and let's go here. All right, so it extracted another file for us here. Probably I should have read a little bit more on how to use the read PST command line tool, but let's see. Oh, thankfully we already have LibreOffice, so it's not a problem. And we can just start reading the file. Okay, so we have a user here, John, as well as a user, security. Let's take a note of these. Let's say that this was in the .pst file. Users, we have security. We have John. We already knew the name of the company, Megacorp, access control system. Okay. For the security account, it's telling us. And we got the contents of the email here. So the password for the account has been changed to access controller. Please ensure this is passed on to your engineers. So fantastic. We have now a set of credentials. So now we're going to need to identify where we can use these credentials for. So let's take a note of those. Let's see if there's anything else here. Not really. It's just the contents of the email. All right, let's close that out. And now we have a set of credentials. So let's go back to the Nmap scan, and we can see that, again, there's only port 21 FTP, 23 Telnet, and 80 HTB. And we have not done any checks at all on the HTTP server, but we should, because potentially these credentials could be for a login panel on the web server that we haven't identified yet. So let's just check this real quick. Let's do some directory busting and see if we can find anything here. This word list is totally fine to use for now. It's the lowercase medium word list from seclists. And we're going to do depth 3 and auto tune so that our scan avoids errors, but is still able to perform quickly. So for now, all it found was this. Let's see what this is. So this is what looks to be just an image of a server, like a data center. Let's just go to the root directory, and we got here LONNC6. Let's take a note of that too. We don't know what that might be for, but it could be useful later on. Possibly it's a password or something. Web server 80. And there's nothing really here. It looks to be like a webcam feed, but we already know that this is actually just an image because of the directory here and the source as well. So it doesn't seem like our scan is finding anything. It's just the root directory, the image, and then the rest is 404s. We can just let that keep going for now while we test for the other port 23 Telnet. So let's take the IP, and then using Telnet, let's try to connect here. And just because, let's specify the port as well, just in case. All right, it's not telling us anything here. Maybe let's try without the port. All right, so I think it was perhaps stalling because our scan here was still going, but now that it's stopped, we actually get a response here without specifying the port. Because we already have a set of credentials, I'm just gonna assume that the user, it's either security, or if that's not the case, we can always just test engineer as well. The handle is valid, but login failed. So let's try engineer, maybe. All right, let's try security again. Oh, interesting. So maybe there was an issue with just copy pasting. Let's try again. Oh, of course. The issue was that we're using the wrong password here. All right, so now that we use the right password that we found after extracting the zip archive from the email, let's see. We have a session now, probably as the user security. True. On the machine access, and let's verify our IP2. Perfect. .htb, and we've got the IP address here that matches the one for the machine. Fantastic. So let's see. I wonder how interactive our shell is. Hopefully it's pretty good. Can we clear screen? No. Let's start running some automated checks. Let's locate WinPeas. Start a Python web server. And then from here, we can use certutil to fetch the file. Well, name it win.exe. Let's move this win.exe over. Can I do win, or no, move win.exe to /desktop win.exe? Does that work? System cannot find the path specified. Let's try specifying the full path. To desktop. Okay, fantastic. That works. If we do dir again, it's not going to be there anymore. If we cd to desktop, we will find, hopefully, the user.txt flag as well as the executable for WinPeas, which is absolutely true. Here's the submission for the user. We do not need to open, or I don't need to open that because I've already done this machine before, a long time ago. Let's run WinPeas. So the reason I'm running WinPeas and then piping it straight into a text file and doing this error suppression is because oftentimes if we don't have a very stable terminal, we can either lose the contents of WinPeas if we lose the connection, or if for some reason the terminal buffer doesn't correctly save the output of the whole script, as well as it might not show us the colors in the script, which might help us identify more likely privilege escalation vectors because the output of WinPeas is color-coded. And it's also just going to let us retrieve the file from our Kali machine and read it more comfortably, as well as make sure that it stays safe and we're not going to have to run this command over and over again, just in case we lose the terminal. So let's do that. More? No? Oh, okay. So it thought that I deleted the one, I guess. Let's try this again. So it did not install the terminal even for a little bit, which is interesting. Is it running in the background potentially? No, it's not. Yeah, so it doesn't appear that the file is growing. Maybe we're not able to. Let's see what is actually in the file. This program is blocked by a group policy. For more information, contact your system administrator. So maybe it's because we transferred the file and the certificate is not valid, or something like this, but clearly somebody does not want us to be running files or executables on the system, so it's likely not the intended privilege escalation path here. So let's see what else we can do manually. So we're extremely limited as well by the privileges that we have. Let's just go around the system a little bit and then see if we can find any files here or documents. Nothing here. Let's see what users are on here. There's only public and administrator, cd public. There does not seem to be any information here. Nothing. All right, we've got here a link of some sort. Let's see what's inside here. Okay, I don't know what happened here either. Let's try again. Okay, so this is actually very interesting. We can see here that there's a sort of history of a command that was run that goes, so using run as, it's using a set of saved credentials, which is for the administrator user, and then it's running this executable file. So the reason that they might be doing this is, first of all, to run the executable with administrator privileges, but it's also because, as we already know, when we tried to run WinPs, public user or a low-level user like us as security, we're not able to execute or run executables on the machine as we tried to do with WinPs. So this is like their way of getting around this restriction, and it's probably a security measure, but it's not very well implemented, because if the public can run this command, and we can check if the administrator credentials are actually saved on the machine here, which they are, we can see. Let's just copy paste this into our notes as well. So if another user can run this command as a low-level user in order to run a executable, it's not just running as a low-level user. This executable is running as the administrator because it's running under, like we said, run as administrator. So, and it's using the saved credentials, of course, which are still saved on the machine. So let's see what we can do here. We can use run as to run executables, but before I try to transfer over a malicious executable to the machine in order to gain a reverse shell, which is totally possible, let's try to get a PowerShell reverse shell, because that will allow us to get a reverse shell connection as the administrator without needing to transfer any files to the machine. So let's try that. Let's see what the command is here. Okay, so we're practically going to copy what this person wrote as well. Let's also set up a listener first. Nutcat LBMP 4444, And let's go to rev shells and get the PowerShell base 64, which is my favorite. We don't need to change this. This doesn't matter, actually. Let's copy that, leave our listener running, and do the command here. Okay, so we need to specify the user. Which is the administrator. We need to specify what credentials it's going to use. And then we can specify the command to run or the program to execute as well, like they were doing here to execute the access command. So for us, we're going to be using our reverse shell payload. And let's see if it works. Okay, so again, it seems like we got a little error because of our shell, but let's just try this again.
2 hours later.
There's something wrong with the syntax of our command here, or the shell, it's not liking it at all. So let's try to do something different real quick. All right, instead of doing this, let's generate a reverse shell payload here. So we've already got everything set up here. Let's just create the file. We can use this as a transfer directory. We're going to be using the Windows x64 stageless payload. I just like the stageless payloads more than the stage ones, as well as it's good practice to not use an interpreter, especially for me, since I'm trying to study for the OS CPU, where you have limited uses of interpreter allowed in the exam. So now we've got the file created, let's retrieve it from the machine. Using certutil. Okay, it didn't let us do this because we're running it under the public. So let's just go back to our user's home directory. It did not like that. Let's just manually do it. It was security, desktop. Perfect. Let's try this one again. Okay, great. So we've got our reverse shell here. Now, instead of specifying the PowerShell payload, which I would have rather been using, but that's okay, let's use our executable here. All right, it did not give us any issues. Let's see if it worked. Okay. Nice. So now we've got a response in our listener, and we are the administrator on the machine. And the shell is much nicer as well. So let's just check if we're really the administrator. And yeah, we have no issues. The root shell, it's already located here. So actually we're done with this machine. Let's just to verify that we are actually the administrator. Let's see if we can create a file on their desktop. And yeah, we can create a file without any issues. that's not a problem. And again, here when we ran the who am I command, it already is telling us that we are the administrator user on this machine. So some takeaways from this box is whenever we're not able to run some automated privilege escalation scripts, it's definitely not a reason to give up. It's likely means that the machine is even easier actually, because we're just going to have to find something on the machine that's going to give us a privilege escalation vector. And as we saw, there was already just not much to look for here besides this file on the public users directory, which practically gave us the keys to escalating our privileges. And even though my first payload that I was running didn't work, likely because it's just too big for the telnet to register correctly, there's always other methods, for example, like using an executable. And again, even though we were not able to run the executable as our user when we were trying to run WinPs, for instance, we are able to run it as the administrator, which is what we're doing here. Or here. We are able to run it as the administrator. So again, with those elevated privileges, it's not a problem to run the file, and because it's running in the context of the administrator, it grants us the shell in their context as well. And after this, we practically own the machine. It's kind of trivial to get to NT authority system from the administrator account as well, since we have all the privileges. But we can verify this as well. And yeah, we have all of the privileges here. It's not a problem at all. So yeah, thank you so much. This was a pretty easy machine. It's always good to do the checks on files, because thanks to us knowing how to use these file extensions, we learned how to use some online tools in order to open these, as well as some native Linux command line tools to open the .pst file. We were able to extract the password, and with the extracted password, we're able to extract the zip directory, and step by step, we were able to gain some credentials, which when we tested on the telnet server on the machine, it gave us a session or a shell on the machine as the low-level user. This shell was not very stable, but we didn't need it to be. All we needed to do was just navigate through the directories and then try to find some hint as to what the privilege escalation vector would be, which we found pretty quickly since there's not a lot of files or information on the machine that we're able to check. So yeah, thank you very much. If you have absolutely any questions, just let me know. If you have any suggestions for any other videos or vectors, attack vectors, privilege escalation vectors that you'd like to see, or any specific boxes on Hack the Box, it's no problem. I'll definitely be recording more videos. So yeah, thank you very much. Bye-bye.